Welcome, welcome, everyone. Welcome on into our virtual program. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Legal Services Corporation's annual event honoring our veterans. My name is Danielle Brooks, and I have the pleasure of serving as LSC's Chief Human Resources Officer. As a proud Army veteran myself of the Be All You Can Be era, I heard it's back, by the way. It's truly an honor to be hosting this event. Honor in Justice, supporting America's veterans. To get us started, I'm pleased to introduce Chairman of LSC's Board of Directors, Mr. John Levy, for our opening remarks today. John?
Thank you, Danielle. And thank you, Danielle, for your service to our country and for your outstanding work at the Legal Services Corporation. It is my distinct privilege to serve as the 10th chairman of the LSC board, and particularly in this, its 50th anniversary year. On behalf of our LSC board, I welcome you to our 6th annual Veterans Forum. This year's event will focus on how civil legal aid can be an important lifeline for veterans reintegrating into civil life while also navigating mental health and substance abuse disorders. Unfortunately, this is a significant issue. More than 1 in 10 veterans has been diagnosed with a substance use disorder, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and the VA reports that distressingly, 2 of 10 veterans with PTSD also have a substance use disorder. Individuals with a substance use disorder frequently encounter legal barriers to obtaining or maintaining access to medication assisted treatment. As we will learn today, legal aid providers are key to addressing the legal issues that prevent treatment and recovery. We're especially privileged today to hear remarks from our country's Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Dennis McDonough, who will discuss the impact of civil legal aid for veterans and the VA's important work to support those with a substance use disorder. And from my hometown, Illinois, Congressman Delia Ramirez, who serves on the House Committee for Veterans Affairs, will also speak. Our program features a panel discussion on the specific needs of the veteran community and how holistic wraparound services can make such a difference. Experts from the legal and military communities will join our moderator, Will Gunn, LSC's Vice President for Legal Affairs and General Counsel, and a former General Counsel of the VA and retired Air Force Colonel. Every November, our country honors the millions of exemplary men and women who bravely serve in our armed forces, as well as their families who have shared in that vital endeavor. When so much of our attention is drawn to what divides us, it is particularly important that we come together to recognize the incredible gift that our veterans have bestowed upon our nation and the value of the rule of law which their service has upheld. Those who fight to preserve our freedoms should not have to struggle when they leave military service for the resources they need for a future of security, dignity, and justice. As Texas Chief Justice Nathan Hecht has observed, and I quote him, "Too often, servicemen and women return from duty to find benefits delayed, families struggling, jobs scarce, homes in foreclosure, and debt collectors at the door. These enemies at home can be as real as a threat to the veteran's survival as the enemies faced in the field. Our military cannot return from risking their lives in defense of our freedoms and values only to find that the justice system they fought for has left them behind. Their access to justice must be assured. While helping veterans access their benefits and their rights is fundamental to the mission of LSC and its grantees. Nearly 1.8 million of our nation's veterans are eligible for LSC funded services, and LSC's 2022 Justice Gap report found that 76% of veteran households annually faced at least one civil legal problem, and 44% faced 5 or more, 27% faced 10 or more. And last year, LSC's 130 grantees across our entire country served over 34,000 veteran households, a 5% increase from just the year before. Well, for 50 years, LSC and its grantees have tried their best to support veterans in a number of ways, including assisting with the launch of stateside.legal.org, the first national website focused on helping veterans and military families, and establishing medical legal partnerships with veteran health centers. Many grantees operate legal hotlines for veterans, sponsor and participate in stand down events and Military Mondays, and receive regular referrals from veterans groups. In addition, grantees provide routine assistance in a wide variety of legal challenges, including eviction, foreclosure, unemployment, and wrongful denial of benefits. In 2021, LSC released a compelling, wide-ranging report of its National Veterans Task Force that raised awareness of the civil legal needs of veterans, promoted partnerships among legal aid providers and other organizations serving veterans, highlighted successful model programs, and provided strategies to increase pro bono legal service for vets. That task force was underwritten by the law firm DLA Piper and co-chaired by two LSC board members, John Malcolm, a vice president at the Heritage Foundation, and Abby Lawless Kuzma, formerly the Halbrook Distinguished Chair of American Government at Taylor University, who will also join us today, and also David Halverson, the CEO of Cypress International, a former lieutenant general in the Army and a member of LSC's Leaders Council. Thank you for their leadership, and the work of the Veterans Task Force continues as implementation teams from that task force work with LSC's grantees and other stakeholders to put into practice the report's recommendations. We are so grateful to the ongoing efforts of that task force and the vital support provided by LSC's Deputy General Counsel, Stephanie Davis. Well, as many of you know, LSC is marking its 50th anniversary this year with an outreach campaign which we are calling Protecting the Promise. That promise of equal justice extends especially to the men and women who have risked their lives defending our country and our values. As President Eisenhower powerfully put it, it is incumbent on all Americans, and I quote, to vigilantly guard the great heritage of liberty, justice, and equality under law, which our forefathers bequeathed to us, unquote. And of course, it's our nation's veterans that we look to time and again to defend that core value. During this milestone year, LSC calls on our country to better serve those who have so ably and selflessly served us. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the continuation of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for those inspiring remarks. And thank you for your leadership, especially in LSC's work on serving those who have served. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, the Honorable Dennis McDonough. Before coming to VA, he served as the 26th White House Chief of Staff and as Principal Deputy National Security Advisor. He believes deeply, as he testified to Congress, that, quote, there is no more sacred obligation nor noble undertaking than to uphold our promises to our veterans, whether they came home decades ago or days ago, unquote. I am pleased to welcome the 11th Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Dennis McDonough. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you for the nice Army introduction there, soldier. Thank you. Thank you for your service in the Army. I want to thank John for those motivating and insightful remarks. It's really good to see you, John. You still haven't shaken that Chicago accent, so I appreciate that. And I was thrilled to learn that Will Gunn is online. He's a legend around these parts here in VA. So, Will, thank you for all that you continue to do to help your fellow veterans. And I also want to thank Ron Flagg for the opportunity to join you all today. Listen, congratulations on 50 years of service and expanding and improving access to justice for all Americans. I want to talk today particularly about access to justice for veterans. And you have led the way on that as well. Last Monday, our nation paused to reflect on the brave men and women who have raised their hand to support and defend the Constitution with their military service, people like Danielle and Will. During his remarks at Arlington National Cemetery, President Biden reminded us that while the country has many obligations, we have but one truly sacred obligation. That is to prepare those we send into harm's way and to care for them and their families when they return home. Now, the thing is that the country as a whole makes that promise, but it's our job at VA to keep that promise. And at VA, we pledge to put the veteran at the center of everything we do. Veterans' overall well-being often means more than providing health care and benefits. That's where our partners become so important to ensuring that veterans are not just surviving, but in fact thriving with a quality of life befitting heroes who sacrifice everything on our behalf. That's where you all come in. Many of the challenges that vets face are directly related to or a byproduct of legal problems. John just went through those stunning statistics, and those often lead to moments of crisis. Veteran homelessness is one of the most profound examples. So let me tell you a quick story about how one of our medical legal partnerships, our MLPs, are helping vets in moments of crisis by incorporating legal services into VA healthcare. A veteran, I'll call him Don, in Bay Pines, Florida, was notified by his landlord that he needed to pay a past due balance or he's going to be evicted within the week. Now, Don had not been previously notified of this and believed it was an error. Unfortunately, the landlord refused to give Don any flexibility. So Don turned to his VA social worker for help, who introduced him to the Bay Area, the Tampa Bay area, that is, Legal Services MLP attorney. The attorney worked with the landlord to get an extension for rent payment, ensured that they'd issue proper notices moving forward. That's one vet who has a roof over his head today because of timely access to legal service. At those moments of maximum risk, when a veteran is most vulnerable, legal aid is a lifeline. Now, last week we announced that veteran homelessness reached a record low during the 2024 point in time count. We call it the PIT count. An 8% decrease from 2023, which is now 56% reduction in overall veteran homelessness since 2010. That's real progress and demonstrates that we can, in fact, end veteran homelessness once and for all. But we still have so much work to do because no veteran should experience homelessness in the country that they swore an oath to defend. VA's efforts to combat veteran homelessness are built on the housing first approach, which seeks to get a veteran into housing, then to provide them with the wraparound services they need to stay housed. Legal aid is one of those very important services. And last year, VA awarded $11.5 million in grants to 79 public and nonprofit organizations. VA grant funding through this program supports over 70% of the country's MLPs. And a substantial number of these partnerships are operated by LSC grantees, successfully closing the gap between a veteran's needs for healthcare and his or her needs for legal assistance. In 2021, the last time I spoke at an LSC event, VA supported 29 MLPs. We now have 52 partnerships. And again, this is an improvement. But demand for affordable legal help continues to rise. So we need to invest in more of these critical partnerships. So let me close with one final story. John will appreciate this. I was reminded of the importance of legal advocates during a trip earlier this year to the Cook County Jail on the west side of downtown Chicago. The story appropriately begins with a veteran, John Coddington, who joined the Air Force and deployed during the initial invasion into Iraq. When he came home, he decided to rejoin his local community, started working at the local jail. Early on, John pushed the jail to start asking inmates whether they'd served in the military as part of the intake process. 2013, with the innovative support of Sheriff Tom Dart, the jail opened a dedicated tier for vets in custody. Vets in that unit receive specialized counseling from Cook County psychologists, assistance with substance use issues, attend vet resources fairs, and other programs that recognize their unique circumstance as veterans. There's even a direct messaging system between the jail's healthcare unit and the VA healthcare system, ensuring seamless medical record transfer. Vets there are visited weekly by 3 of my VA teammates, Carmen Ramirez, Melissa Orneales, and Nancy Lucena, who connect them with VA resources and establish early relationships with VA. The on-site legal clinic, Legal Aid Chicago, at Jesse Brown VA Medical Center, our main hospital right there, also downtown, has been instrumental in helping veterans reintegrate into their communities when they leave incarceration. One of the many successes from the Cook County Jail is a female combat veteran. We'll refer to her as Tina. Tina's journey began with a domestic dispute involving an abusive partner, which led to her apartment being raided. She was charged with drug possession and unlawful possession of a weapon. She had untreated mental health issues stemming from her time in the military. And she had no income or social support in Chicago. Hitting rock bottom put my life in perspective, Tina said. Cook County Jail is not a nice place to be. And I'm certain there are many lawyers on the screen here who can associate themselves with that finding. While in custody, VA's Veteran Justice Program specialist identified Tina as being at risk of homelessness and referred her to Veterans Treatment Court. This allowed her to enter a residential treatment program and obtain permanent housing. Tina obtained a service connection disability rating, and she even landed a job in the environmental management service unit at the Jesse Brown VA Hospital. Veterans helping veterans, taking care of each other, no matter what the circumstances. There's nothing better. So thanks for allowing me to share some thoughts with you today. More importantly, much more importantly, thank you for your continued support and for your partnership for ensuring our justice-involved vets are not left on their own, unsupported. Access to legal aid is crucial to keeping our promise to veterans. Together, we can help them get beyond their current struggles, foster hope for a future filled with new opportunities of the type that they're right to expect, having done all they've done for us. It's an honor to work with you all to serve our veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors, and to serve them as well as they've served us. Danielle, let me yield back to you. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Secretary McDonough. Those stories have me fired up and ready to rock, as we used to say in our old time of cadence. Thank you for taking time to be with us today and for helping to frame the rest of our virtual conversation. On behalf of LSC, thank you too for your service to America's veterans as Secretary for Veterans Affairs these past several years. I am now pleased to turn it over to LSC board member Abby Kuzma, co-chair of LSC's Veterans Task Force, who is going to introduce a speaker.
Thank you so much. It's my honor to introduce Congresswoman Delia C. Ramirez, who represents Illinois' 3rd Congressional District. It's a particular privilege to introduce Congresswoman Ramirez as I live in Illinois' 4th Congressional District and am aware of her great works. We are thrilled to have her with us today as a member of the House Committee for Veterans Affairs and the vice-ranking member of the Committee on Homeland Security. Congresswoman Ramirez spent nearly 2 decades working in the nonprofit sector, focused on helping vulnerable members of her community. She has held senior leadership positions at several nonprofits that work to make communities stronger for low-income people and vulnerable populations. During that time, she was champion for equal treatment and better outcomes for people on a range of issues, including affordable housing, expanded healthcare for senior citizens, and education reform. She is the first Latina elected to Congress in Illinois. While in Congress, Congresswoman Ramirez has maintained her strong advocacy for low-income people, including support for LSC and greater access to justice through the appropriations process. Thank you so much for joining us today, Congresswoman. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. And thank you, LSC, for having me today. I also want to thank Secretary McDonough and all the other speakers joining this important conversation. And what a better way to close the conversation with Secretary McDonough talking about the comprehensive support services happening in Chicago, in my community, as we really make sure that veterans are able to help veterans and we develop comprehensive support services that are actually effective and changing lives. Well, folks, it's been about 2 years since I first came to Congress, and I continue to have the same conversations as we continue to figure out how do we better support veterans experiencing homelessness? How do we prevent veterans from falling into homelessness? And how do we work together in what seems radical, but this idea of actually ending veteran homelessness altogether? And as a former executive director of a homeless shelter, I serve people from all walks of life, including hundreds of veterans who are experiencing homelessness. And one of those reasons, and a driver of veteran homelessness, we know, is substance abuse disorders. Homelessness and substance abuse disorders are interconnected. And by addressing substance abuse disorders, we're also proactively addressing and helping to prevent veterans from falling into homelessness. As a member of the House Veteran Affairs Committee, and as someone who proudly represents over 20,000 veterans, I know that the urgency of this matter, it couldn't be more understated. We have to make sure that veterans experiencing homelessness and those struggling with substance abuse get the help they need and that they get that help right now. And I want to commend the work that my colleagues in the Department of Veteran Affairs has done to address what this is an urgency. Look, since last year, the VA has decreased, you heard just a few moments ago from the secretary, the number of veterans experiencing homelessness by over 7.5%. And it's permanently housed nearly 48,000 veterans just this year. And yet, we know that there are at least 32,000 veterans who remain unhoused. 32,000 veterans who need our help right now. And so finding solutions that work is how we honor their service through action. And it's why I am proud to have introduced a new bill to create permanent housing opportunities for veterans. The bill would expand the services that grant per diem providers provide to include prevention services and also allow for capital grants to be used to convert units into permanent housing. And it's also why I'm proud to co-sponsor the End Veteran Homelessness Act of 2024, which I'm so glad that we passed out of subcommittee. The legislation would expand eligibility for HUD, VASH vouchers and create a pathway for more veterans at risk of experiencing homelessness to obtain permanent housing. And I urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to make good on their promises to veterans and move this bill to full committee so that we can vote on it and so that we can pass it. Look, we have to honor our service, and we have to honor their service with action. And that means increasing the per diem rate for all transitional housing providers. It also means reinstating COVID-era authorities that allowed the VA to help veterans get to and from medical appointments and job interviews. It also means expanding eligibility for housing through the VA and the various programs that HUD administers. It also means ensuring veterans have access to legal aid, including our veterans struggling with substance abuse disorders and experiencing homelessness. Because we know that no veteran should go homeless, and every single veteran should be supported so that we prevent and address substance abuse. We have to, and I said this last week in our special order hour on the House floor, that the way that we really honor their service is doing it through our legislative action. Again, I am so thankful for all the work that you are doing to assist our veterans, especially low-income veterans, in connecting with the benefits that they earn and they deserve. And I look forward to working closely with you in the coming weeks, in the coming months, and in the Veteran Affairs Committee to ensure that we are addressing the needs our veterans have in a comprehensive way where we can hear more of those success stories. Be Tina, be Mark, be John, be Juan. So let's continue to do that work, and let's continue to ensure that that work is done together. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Representative Ramirez, for your words, for your support of civil legal aid, and for your dedication to our nation's veterans. I am now pleased to introduce the next segment in our program, where we have the privilege of hearing directly from a client of one of LSC's grantees. Thank you for giving your attention now to hearing Mr. Larry Savage's story.
My name is Larry Savage. I'm a U.S. Navy vet, Petty Office, 3rd class. I had got a bill from the VA for $52,000. And me and my wife had applied for hardship and everything, and they denied it. They were talking about taking out most of my Social Security check, and I told her if they do that, I'm gonna be homeless.
025. And 520, your signal buster. Mr. Savage is a 70-year-old veteran. He came to us at the Medical Legal Partnership at the New Orleans VA because he had been assessed an overpayment by the VA of about $50,000.
When they told me that I owed them that money, I had to pay them, and they were gonna collect it from my Social Security check, I was depressed, worried, and I just didn't know what to do.
We met with Mr. Savage and we got a snapshot of his income and expenses to present the situation to the VA. Ultimately, what we were able to do at Southeast Louisiana Legal Services is uncover the source of the debt, which was a technical error at the VA. And through the course of our representation, we were able to resolve that debt and zero out the balance.
Well, I would recommend any vet that have any type of problem, check with Southeast Legal Service.
I know Mr. Savage isn't here with us today, but I do want to thank him for his courage, both in service to our country and in sharing his story with all of us. It is absolutely essential for any event like this to understand the true impact of the work we are talking about. And there is no better way to do that than by hearing directly from individuals who are impacted by it. Thank you to Mr. Savage and to Southeast Louisiana Legal Services for sharing this story with us all today. I'm excited now to transition us into a panel discussion on supporting veterans with substance use disorder. To introduce this topic and moderate our conversation, I am pleased to introduce my colleague and fellow veteran, Will Gunn. Will currently serves as LSC's Vice President for Legal Affairs and General Counsel. Before coming to LSC, he served 5 years as General Counsel for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. He also retired from the Air Force in 2005. Will, the virtual floor is yours.
Thanks, Danielle. I do appreciate it. Everyone, I'm honored to moderate today's conversation with our distinguished panel. That panel includes Bob Keating, a managing attorney at Colorado Legal Services, where he leads that organization's Pueblo office, and who has worked in legal services in Colorado for the last 30 years. Also pleased to welcome LSC attorney Amy Romero, former LSC attorney Amy Romero, who currently serves as a member of the Department of Justice's Service Members and Veterans Initiative. Amy is a former legal aid attorney, of course, and we're happy to have her with us. We also have Judge Sharon Heath of the Stark County Court in central Northeast Ohio, where she founded the Honor Court docket that serves justice-involved veterans. And last but not least, we have the Honorable Patrick Murphy, former Undersecretary of the U.S. Army, who was the first Iraq War veteran elected to Congress, and who currently serves as the co-founder and executive chairman of a company that provides tech-based business solutions to ensure employees are recruited, trained, retained, and truly engaged. So panelists, welcome, and I appreciate your joining our conversation today. Patrick, I know you have some limitations on your time, so I'd really like to start with you to give us a bit of a foundation. You come to this discussion with someone with multiple perspectives. You're the former #2 civilian official with the Department of the Army, and you are also a former Army officer. Can you share with us the greatest challenges that you've seen people encounter in terms of reintegrating into civilian life?
Will do. General Gunn, thank you so much for your service in the Air Force and your current service to Legal Service Corporation. But I have to give a shout out to Danielle Brooks, who's the overall moderator today. because she was also part of America's varsity team, our U.S. Army, like myself. So, but listen, it's great to be here. We know our brother and sister veterans, most are civic assets. They do phenomenal work. They are great Americans, but there are far too many that drowned in the sea of goodwill. And especially during that transition period where every year we have over 200,000 active troops who become veterans. And we got to make sure we're doing all we can to reach out to them. And part of that leadership philosophy, Will, as you mentioned, is meeting them where they are. For me, it's personal. When I joined the Army at 19, it changed my life. Allowed me to go become a commissioned officer, allowed me to go to law school. And even when I was in law school, working at a civil law clinic as the student leader there, and meeting people where they are, including clients. And we used to go to a soup kitchen. And I'll never forget, one of my first clients was a Vietnam veteran who happened to be homeless. And he still wore his cargo jacket. And he came in because he knew we had set up this weekly clinic. And he came and said, "Hey, Patrick, can you help me, fill out this job application?" Right? Not really legal services work, but it was being there for him. He was so proud that he had now a lawyer, helping him, to check his work. But we all know there are just far too many that fall through the cracks. And again, I'm very quick to say how our veterans are civic assets and they start businesses. I invest in those businesses. But that ethic, Will, that you and I and Danielle and so many on this call and all of us know is that we leave no one behind. And when you see, and Secretary Dennis McDonough, mentioned it, when you see one veteran being homeless is one too many. They cut it this year 7%. It's the lowest it's ever been. That is phenomenal. We have served about 6.7 million veterans through the VA, through Veterans Health Administration, more than ever in history. That's phenomenal. But we also know that too many, are taking their own life. We know too many are, wrapped up in substance abuse. And so that's why the work with Legal Services Corporation and all of us on this call is so critically important. So the number one challenge that I see is figuring out, how we can meet these brother and sister veterans where they are. And we meet them through our clinics across this country that we help fund. We meet them through social media. We meet them, where they are, wherever they are. And whenever we can get in front of them to make sure we take care of them. So there you go, Will.
Appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. Bob, I want to turn to you as someone who manages and leads a legal services operation there in Colorado. Over the years, I've encountered a lot of lawyers and a lot of different people who have a perception that the biggest legal challenge that veterans face is accessing VA benefits such as health care and disability compensation. In your work in legal aid, are those the only types of legal issues you see that come up for veterans? What's your experience been like?
Well, our office, we'd like to get accredited, each of the attorneys in here, to work with the VA, but so many of our cases don't involve VA benefits per se. We had 50 cases in the last year in the Pueblo office, and across our organization, there were over 500 cases involving veterans. And although there might be some substance use disorder issues or alcohol issues, oftentimes it's delirium associated with illness or dementia that brings the client in. We recently had a client with delirium who made an improvident real estate agreement, and we're working to get him out of that. We had to bring a declaratory judgment act to have the court declare his rights and other parties' rights under the various contracts. So it's important to do each area of the law as they come in. We had a gentleman many years ago who came in, and unfortunately he was discharged, less than honorable discharge, but it was related to his military service. He was stringing communications wire during the Vietnam era in Alaska, and he fell out of a tree and suffered a head injury. Due to the head injury, he ended up having some criminal problems, and he was discharged. He came to us with fairly rapidly advancing dementia, and he needed a conservatorship to help him out to handle his finances. But he also, we got him into the PACE program, which is the Program for All-Inclusive Care of the Elderly. It's a Medicaid program, and he was able to get medical treatment outside of the VA, but in the community. And he ended up in a nursing facility. And unfortunately, his dementia advanced so quickly that he wasn't able to communicate in short order and subsequently died. But he needed our assistance to get the health care that he needed, even outside of the VA. We also have cases where we're helping the spouses of veterans. When the veteran may be in a nursing home under the Medicare Catastrophic Coverage Act, the spouse doesn't lose their home or their income. They are allowed to access the institutionalized spouse's income. And I think that's very important. And those are examples of what we're able to do outside of the scope of the VA work.
Appreciate you sharing your perspectives. Judge Heath, you are a pioneer in the Veterans Treatment Court field, having founded the Honor Court there in Stark County. Can you share with our audience what differentiates an honor court from other types of courts, and what representation looks like in the cases that come before you?
Sure. Thank you for allowing me to share with everyone today. And I want to thank all the veterans participating in the webinar for their service to our nation. Honor Court is a veterans treatment court that is a certified specialized docket by the Ohio Supreme Court. And our court deals with felons. We were the first felony veterans treatment court in the state of Ohio. And what particularly works in this veterans treatment court, and the reason I named it Honor Court is I'm really stressing destigmatization. Our mission statement is reclaiming honor, dignity, and lives. And we really focus on helping as many people as we can. There are some people that are in our program that have low-level nonviolent offenses that qualify for a diversion program, where if they successfully complete our program, their charges are dismissed and their record expunged. There's others that are in our general probation track, which the carrot is in completing the program. They can successfully get off probation in less time than a normal probation track, because we're asking more of them during the time period they participate in the court in terms of accountability and give back to the community. And then we also have a judicial release track for people who may have been sentenced to prison and brought back and put in honor court so that they can complete their obligations under their sentence in the community rather in terms of a prison sentence. And basically what honor court is, it is an alternative to jail or prison. And by this success, we save taxpayers money while also rehabilitating and providing our participants with a new foundation for the rest of their life. Our secret sauce is our mentor program, which is volunteer veterans from the community who volunteer to mentor our participants and keep in contact with them in between regular court sessions. It's extremely helpful. Veterans relate to veterans. My dad was in the Army. My husband was in the Air Force. I did not serve, but I know and have embraced the military culture. You have to do that in your Veterans Treatment Court, and they relate when they are partnered up with a veteran mentor. That really, really helps encourage them to succeed through the program. We also focus on everybody has to have a mental health assessment and a substance abuse assessment. I don't care if your crime suggests that it was related to that or not. I need to know what the whole picture is so that we can develop a treatment plan that works for each of our participants. I have a multidisciplinary team that staffs our participants. That includes a representative from our local community legal aid organization here, a representative of the Veterans Service Commission. There's a variety of other people too, but those services, the combination of legal aid services and Veterans Service Commission services are key to securing for my participants the benefits that they are entitled to, and we strive to make sure that they get those benefits because they are supportive to what they are trying to accomplish. I'll just give you a couple of examples. One of my favorites is Rusty. He was a gunner and in Vietnam and was credited with saving about 20 men in a really hot situation. He, despite having been out of the service all this time, never got his medals of recognition. And we were not only able to secure a discharge or a upgrade in his service, we also obtained all of his medals for him, and at his graduation from Honor Court gave him those. He said that that was the first time he ever truly felt like a veteran. So it was emotional. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it right now. Also, medical services and dental services, so important. A recent graduate of ours, and this is interesting because he actually came to us from an adjacent county that runs a Veterans Treatment Court, but he lived in Stark County. So Judge Diapolito said, if you do the Veterans Treatment Court in Stark County, that's good enough for me. He graduated there the Friday before Veterans Day with me, and he's actually graduating today in Mahoning County. But we got him, he was a meth addict. So the teeth, things like that, all gone. He got brand new dentures, smiles. He secured a job from somebody that he did community service work with who was so impressed. They were working on a veteran's home, and the individual offered him a job, asked him what he wanted to make. I think he told him something like $8, $9 an hour. He goes, I'm going to pay you $25 an hour. So because I incentivize community service that benefits veterans organizations or veterans, he was able to connect with a veteran organization and ended up securing employment with them. And finally, securing benefits for our participants is literally life-saving. Someone who had not been to VA and didn't even know he was VA eligible, I have everybody, if they haven't been to the doctor in a while, go. He was diagnosed with cancer, didn't even know he had it, and was able to secure the medical benefits and services that he was entitled to and was able to survive. So I offer that up as an example of how connecting people with services is life-saving.
Thanks very much, Judge. I just want to say I love the name Honor Court. And I've spoken to someone that I know that Judge Robert Russell, who was
Oh, yeah,
another
Judge Russell.
pioneer here in
Very,
Buffalo,
yeah.
New York. And he talks about the power of the mentoring component. And so what you're saying, what both of you say with respect to that is just so powerful. Veterans helping veterans. So thank you. Amy, I know that you serve on the Department of Justice's Service Members and Veterans Initiative. Can you share with us a bit about the initiative and any trends that DOJ has seen regarding veteran civil legal needs?
Absolutely. So I know Judge Heath just spoke about veteran treatment courts and the amazing court that's taking place in her jurisdiction. So veteran treatment courts mainly exist at the state and local levels, and they receive funding by DOJ's Office of Justice programs. We do have several federal level veteran treatment programs run through U.S. attorneys' offices, and I believe there's going to be a link in the chat box so you can check to see if there's a federal level veteran treatment program in your jurisdiction. As Will mentioned, we do have a Service Member and Veterans Initiative, which is housed in DOJ's Civil Rights Division. Through this initiative, we offer outreach and training to support service members, veterans, their families, and we enforce civil rights laws that impact veterans and service members, including SCRA, which is the Service Member Civil Relief Act, which provides financial protections, USERA, which is Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, which provides employment protections to service members who are returning from their service to their civilian jobs. Now, Judge Heath talked about the secret sauce for her court. For me, when it comes to veterans with substance use, my secret sauce is the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. And I want to talk about that because I know a lot of you, when I was a legal aid attorney, which is where I started my career, I did use the ADA. I often used it in my eviction defense cases, in my employment cases. And so there is a private right of action, but DOJ enforces it as well. So the ADA, as many of you know, is a federal law that gives protections to individuals with disabilities in many areas of life: employment, healthcare, courts, prisons, schools, homeless shelters, restaurants, hotels. When you think of the ADA, a lot of people think of ramps or elevators or service animals, sign language interpreters. But I want to talk about the ADA as it relates to veterans with substance use disorder, and specifically with opioid use disorder. So substance use disorder and opioid use disorder are disabilities under the ADA. And as I'm sure you all know, opioid use disorder is life-threatening and debilitating. Each year in Rhode Island, where I live, opioid-related overdoses continues to be a leading cause of death. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case where you all live as well. The good news is that opioid use disorder is treatable. There are 3 life-saving medications approved by the FDA: methadone, buprenorphine, or otherwise often known as Suboxone, and naltrexone, which is often known as Vivitrol. But the problem is people who are prescribed this medication often face barriers due to stigma around the medications. So we've seen prisons refuse to allow inmates to have access to their medication. Sober housing, where a condition of living there is that the individual not take their medication. Primary care doctors that refuse to see patients that are taking this medication. Employers who refuse to hire someone if a drug test shows one of these medications, and the list goes on and on. So the ADA protects individuals who are taking legally prescribed medication. So just as the ADA would ensure that someone with diabetes is able to receive the insulin they need, the ADA ensures that someone with opioid use disorder is able to receive the medication they need, whether it be methadone or Suboxone or Vivitrol. And so we have used the ADA to help ensure that people who are prescribed this medication don't have to choose. Either take my medication or comply with probation, or take my medication or get access. And so I'm going to give you a quick example from one of my cases. So I'm at a U.S. Attorney's office. I'm in AUSA, and I received a referral from a doctor at the VA. This veteran had come to the VA for a medical issue, and while hospitalized, the doctor had started him on a prescription for Suboxone because they discovered he had opioid use disorder. He was in withdrawal when he was in the hospital. So he was ready to be medically discharged, and he needed to go to a skilled nursing facility for rehab. And he wanted to go to this specific facility where his friends and family could visit him. It was in a good location for him. And so at first, the skilled nursing facility said, sure, yep, we have room. And then when they found out that he was on Suboxone, they said, no, sorry. And so the complaint came to me. I opened an investigation, and sure enough, they did have a policy that they would not take individuals who were prescribed methadone or Suboxone for opioid use disorder. Interestingly, they did allow patients who were prescribed Suboxone for pain, but not for opioid use disorder, which kind of highlights the stigma around opioid use disorder and around kind of medication. There's a stigma that you don't want to give drugs to drug addicts. It's essentially what people don't say anymore, but often, unfortunately, what's guiding these decisions. And so we were able to enter into a settlement agreement with this skilled nursing facility where they no longer do that. And so this is one of many cases that we've brought. It's kind of an exciting initiative. And I don't know if Jessica has dropped the guidance, but we now have guidance oh good, she did do the guidance about exactly this. So if you have a client who's facing a barrier, who is told like, you can't receive this service, or you can't have this job, or you can't have this housing because of because you're prescribed this medication, then please feel free to reach out to us.
Patrick, I want to turn back to you. I know that you have a hard stop coming up, and so, but your perspective is really unique, having been both a soldier and someone who rose to be the #2 official in the U.S. Army. I tell you, real quick, about a week ago, right before Veterans Day, I was at a prison down in Florida, and I met a veteran there. And he told me about his substance abuse that started while he was in the military. And this was during the 80s and 90s, and during a time when, of course, the military started really cracking down on drug use. And they nodded to rehabilitation, but from my perspective, did very little with respect to that. Now we hear about what VA's integration into the Veterans Treatment Course and the other efforts. Do you think the VA and the military and the legal community has done enough? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, thanks. Well, I appreciate it. There's no doubt we all could do more. And it's not necessarily a whole of government approach. It's a whole of nation approach that we need to take. And so that's why I appreciate Amy saying what she did, right? It's people view U.S. attorneys and prosecutors, like I used to be in the Southern New York, as like, you're just trying to prosecute crimes. No, you're fighting for justice and do what's right. And especially when you talk about, veterans courts, or in a judge's cases you mentioned in Ohio, they call them honor courts today, right? We have about 80 veterans courts across the country. They were established, as mentioned, by Judge Russell back in 2008. His clerk was a former 82nd Airborne guy like myself. And they do phenomenal work. Why? Because as the judge said, it's the wraparound services. It's, hey, if they have substance abuse issues, if they have mental health issues, they get those wraparound services if they're homeless. And that's why these specialty courts are so incredibly important. They're incredibly effective, with about 90% effective rate, right? And, why is that? That's because, as you mentioned, Will, 1 in 5 of our Iraq-Afghanistan veterans, of our generation of veterans, will suffer the 2 signature injuries of our wars: PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or TBI, traumatic brain injury. And so, when you have that, to make sure that if they fall through the cracks, if they go down the wrong path, that it's not just prosecuting and putting them in jail, because that's how it was in the past. Well, as you mentioned, right now in America, there's over 181,000 American veterans in jail. 181,000, right? That's why, as we say, when I was in the Pentagon, what we say, go left of boom, be proactive, right? And so that's why these veterans courts, or in Ohio, honor courts, are so incredibly effective, and especially, how we're working with it through Legal Services Corporation. And I'll say one last thing, because I think it's important. Amy mentioned about 1 in 6 of our veterans, Iraq, Afghanistan veterans, suffer from substance abuse. And so, we need to make sure that we have this holistic treatment, gives them the care, the treatment they need. Yes, there is somewhat of a no tolerance policy in the military. It's why we do mandatory drug tests, because, we can't have them, high on drugs, when they're firing assault weapons, etc. Right. But, if they incurred these injuries, or these mental health issues, or this substance abuse, while they were in service, we just can't discard them and treat them like a bad habit. We got to make sure we take care of them, provide those wraparound services, give them the support through Legal Services Corporation and our allies across this country, and really better effectively use these 80 veterans treatment courts across the country, because they're so damn effective. And that's why it's an honor to be here with the judge, with Amy, with all of us, on this call, Will, with Bob Keating, and really, Chairman John Levy, who really, as he became the chairman, over 8 years ago, really made this an initiative, and really expanded the board and said, we're going to get great Americans like Will Gunn and Danielle Brooks and all these great folks, to be part of his, day-to-day team, but getting allies like the folks in this call to do all we can to make sure we're pushing the effort. And over 200 folks that are joining us in the Zoom today, that not just preach to the choir, but expand our congregation out there to help our brothers and sister veterans by living that ethos that we leave no veteran behind. So thank you for having me, Will, and everybody. I hope to see you all soon.
Appreciate the remarks. Thank you very, very much for participating. I know you have to go, so thank you. Bob, over to you, since we are short on time. I just want to get your perspectives, and if there's one thing that you'd like to share, and I'm just wondering if you could just briefly comment. We've heard this term of wraparound services. As you close out your thoughts, can you just mention a bit about how wraparound services fit in the context of civil legal aid?
Yes, our community has, and I think across the state, Legal Resources Day, and folks come in for guidance with attorneys. And a gentleman who is a veteran, he was a contractor. He came in for some contract advice, but he had told me that he just got out of treatment a short time before at the VA treatment center in Sheridan, Wyoming, and he was singing their praises. He said they did a great job to help him get straight. He was back in business. I think that's wonderful. I've had the occasion to be involved with the VA on several issues recently, and the VA is doing a great job, including the switchboard if you're trying to get in. But for wraparound services, we have homeless agencies working with us, DV organizations, the community, and I think every community needs to be involved to provide assistance, including legal services organizations, the treatment courts, everything. There's an opportunity for veterans to get voluntary treatment for substance use and alcohol. Sometimes there's a need for an emergency commitment or an involuntary commitment outside of veterans court. But it's best if they get in there before they get in any type of trouble. But of course, the veterans courts have a great success rate.
Thank you very, very much, Bob.
Thank you.
And you mean you've worn these various hats, legal aid and also assistant U.S. attorney. Any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was an LSC attorney, I would represent individual clients, and through that individual representation, you get relief for your client. But often the bad practice doesn't stop, right? The landlord's still discriminating against just different tenants, your future clients, essentially, or the employer is still kind of a bad employer, or the hospital is still kind of turning away patients. Whatever the problem is, isn't necessarily addressed. Sometimes it can be addressed through individual representation, but not always. And so that's where I think DOJ comes in and the civil rights work we do and why it's so exciting. So we enforce many of the same laws that you all do, or the LSC attorneys do, but we're focused on pattern of practice. I think our jurisdiction is pattern of practice, an issue of against a group of persons that raises an issue of general importance. So first of all, we take the position that veterans and service members, that that is an elevated public importance, that we are committed to, that these people served our country and we're committed to serving them. But we, I think the link was put in the chat about the complaint, but if you have a client and they're facing an issue that maybe there's a blanket policy, right? You have reason to believe other people are also going to be impacted by this policy. We encourage you to bring it to us. I gave up the example earlier of the veteran with the skilled nursing facility. Well, actually, that skilled nursing facility was owned by this big corporation that runs skilled nursing facilities throughout the country. And so through that one complaint, we changed the policy for all the skilled nursing facilities. We had a complaint in Pennsylvania, my colleagues, where it started with, it was 3 people. And they were told as a condition of probation that they couldn't be on their medication for opioid use disorder. Well, DOJ, based on those 3 people, opened a lawsuit and reached a settlement with the entire state court system of Pennsylvania. So, sometimes the individual work that you do can really have an impact, and we encourage you to file those complaints. And if you're not sure, to reach out to your local U.S. Attorney's office. What I do, civil rights coordinator, there's one of me in every single U.S. Attorney's office in the country. So if you don't know who that person is, feel free to email me directly, and I can connect you to the person, who's geographically kind of located where you are.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. Make sure that's in the chat if it's not already. Thank you. Judge Heath, I'll give you the last word. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I think it's really important to be a constantly evolving court in veterans treatment courts. I really stress that I want my team members to make suggestions on how we can do things better, more efficiently. I don't subscribe to, oh, we always did it this way, so we're going to do it this way, because I always like to get better at what we do. That's number 1. And number 2 is hope, and don't give up. As long as somebody wants sobriety, wants mental health, and is willing to continue to work at it, even though they may slip or fall, don't give up on them and give them hope, and they will succeed.
Thank you very much. Judge, I want to thank you, Amy, Bob. Thank just all of our panelists for your contributing to this discussion today. Now I'd like to turn it back to you, Danielle.
Thank you, Will, and thank you to our esteemed panel. What an insightful discussion about how we can best wrap our arms around our nation's veterans and ensure they have the support they need during trying times. This panel certainly hit home for me. I have an uncle that served in Vietnam and came home drug addicted and ended up getting clean through VA services and spent the majority of his working life after going to school as an addiction counselor. So I certainly take part to all that was shared during the panel today. And thank you all so much for the work that you're doing. It is now a true pleasure for me to introduce our final speaker who will close us out for the day. Please join me in welcoming LSC's fearless leader and my boss, Mr. Ron Flagg. Ron, take it away.
Well, thank you, Danielle. That's a lot of tough acts to follow, including you. Thank you for emceeing, for your service to LSC and to our country. What a privilege and a pleasure it is to have you as a colleague. I also want to thank my LSC colleague, Will Gunn, and to Patrick Murphy for joining us today. and not only today, but for your long distinguished service. I want to thank all of our staff here at LSC and all of our legal aid colleagues throughout the country who have served. We at LSC recognize and appreciate your sacrifices and service. A special thank you to Larry Savage for his service and his courage to share his story to illustrate the life-impacting assistance legal aid programs make every day in the lives of our veterans. Thanks to Secretary McDonough for his inspiring keynote and for all he and his team do each and every day for our nation's veterans. Many thanks to Representative Ramirez for her compelling remarks. And to our panelists, you are fabulous. Patrick, Amy, Bob, and Judge Heath, thank you for your great and passionate insights, and job well done as our moderator. Thanks to my boss and our leader, John Levy. I want to echo John's thanks to our LSC Veterans Task Force members who have helped guide and lead LSC's work in this area, and particularly a special shout out to my colleague, Stephanie Davis, for her tremendous efforts over now many years on our Veterans Task Force work and in moving this work forward after the task force. As you've heard here today, the civil legal issues facing America's veterans are often the same issues confronting other legal aid clients: the need for stable housing, the need for health care and secure home environments, the need for help with employment and consumer issues. What often differentiates veterans from civilians, though, are the additional barriers, the barriers that make more complicated all of these legal issues, often mental health and substance use issues that have frequently arisen directly from their military service. Legal aid organizations, in partnership with outreach centers, health facilities, local courts, and government entities like the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Justice, both well represented here today, are making inroads in challenging and changing the stigma around these issues and meeting people where they are to ensure they receive the assistance they deserve. My profound thanks to all our grantees and their teams who are working tirelessly every day to make sure our veterans are given the benefit of access to the very justice they fought to protect for all of us. And to any veteran watching today, on behalf of the staff and leadership at LSC, thank you for your service. And I say to you, we and our grantees are here if and when you need help. Before we sign off, I want to remind everyone of something John Levy mentioned in his comments at the top of our event. We're still currently in the 50th year of LSC's existence. I invite all of you, if you haven't already, to sign the pledge to support civil legal aid. You can go to our website, our team, and thank you to Jessica Wechter, who's been dropping chat comments like crazy today. We'll drop the link in the chat box here, LSC Gov Celebrate 50 Sign Pledge. By signing the pledge, you can keep up to date with what's coming up next for LSC, and it's a way you can show your support for the work we highlighted today. Also, be sure to follow us on social media. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notifications about events like this one. You can also find us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We hope you'll continue to follow along and support our work. My penultimate thank you is to my LSC colleague, Maria DeVouvier, who did a brilliant job as the principal producer of today's program. And finally, thank you everyone for being with us today. Have a great rest of your day and stay well.